In my previous Iceberg video, I talked about Payday 2. This time, I'm talking about another game I really like, Dead by Daylight. Although the game can be more often not be very frustrating to play, you can still get some enjoyment and fun out of it. Speaking of fun, the game holds just enough content for a full Iceberg explanation, as you can see by this image. However, unlike the previous Iceberg video, I made this one myself. And unlike the Payday 2 Iceberg, the Dead by Daylight Iceberg doesn't have too terribly many interesting stuff to go over. Also, this Iceberg will be more of an Iceberg for beginners, so obviously if you've been playing Dead by Daylight for a long while, you're going to know at least half of these things. But nonetheless, that's not going to stop me from making this video. Oh, and I also want to give a big thank you to my good friend and fellow YouTuber LOL Scorpion for providing me with some gameplay footage for the background. I'll be leaving a link to his channel in the description. So with that said, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and let's get to it. Pink items. On the killer side, all of them have at least 2 pink add-ons for their power. Same goes for survivors, however survivors also have 2 unique pink items. Those are the rainbow map and the skeleton key. The reason for these specific items having a pink variant might have something to do with the fact that they are the only items in the game not to have a brown or yellow variant, which are 2 of the most common variants for items to be found for. This do not apply to the flashlight, as even though it doesn't have a brown variant, it does have a yellow variant, and both of the maps and keys starts at a green variant. Old Tinkerer perk. Tinkerer is a killer perk that can be obtained by unlocking it in the Shrine of Secrets or by leveling the Hillbilly up to level 40 to obtain the Teachable. Currently, the perk works like this. When the generator is repaired to 70%, you receive a noise notification and you're given the undetectable status effect, which removes your terror radius for 12, 14 or 16 seconds depending on the perk's tier level. However, previously, this perk did something completely different. If you played a killer whose power had a charge timer, like the Hillbilly's Chainsaw, Cannonball's Chainsaw, or Trapper's Trap Placing, when equipped with a Tinkerer perk, it affected the timer of those power by 6, 8, or 10%, depending again on the perk's tier level. Basically what this means is that you were able to fully charge a chainsaw or set your traps much quicker. This was very overpowered, considering that if you equipped, for example, the Primer Bulb and Carbureto tuning guide, you could fully charge your chainsaw in less than 2 damned seconds. This was ultimately altered in patch 2.1 due to the unfairness and, well, at the time, the perk was so ineffective for most killers anyway. Cannibal's locked faces. If you go to Killer and select the Cannibal and check out his customization tab, you can notice that there are 4 locked masks. Each mask represents 4 of the main survivors first introduced to the game. Dwight is Leader Face, Meg is Athlete Face, Claudette is Smart Face, and Jake is Survivor Face. The way you unlock these masks, you have to play as the Cannibal in public matches and sacrifice a total of 25 different players playing as these specific characters. So basically, if you manage to sacrifice 25 Dwights in public games, you get the Leader Face. Ghostface leak. A short time before the official release and announcement of the Ghostface DLC, instead of releasing patch update 2.7, Behavior accidentally released a developer build of the Ghostface DLC. This included the killer's full model, walking animation, Mori animation, and how his power would work. When Behavior caught wind of this, they forced all players out of the game, and those who had this developer build installed had to download the correct update. Golden toolboxes. On various different maps, these golden toolboxes can be found. You are unable to interact with them, and they do just about as much as a Dwight hiding in a closet. Nothing. These are simply small Easter eggs left by the developers. Getting outside the map. There have been a few instances of players being thrown out of the map, either intentionally or by complete freak accident. We'll discuss one of these ways later on in the Iceberg that unfortunately doesn't work anymore. However, let's talk about one that still kinda works. If you're playing as a Hillbilly, if you're playing on a map that has a hill on it, more favorable would be Outer Haven wreckers like Blood Lodge. If you charge off the side of the hills and charge upon something like a stack of tires, you have a chance of flying high up in the air and potentially charge over and out of the map. Once you are outside the map, there aren't a whole lot of things to do, besides being completely stuck. If you enter the area of the exit gates, you are unable to leave that area and will be stuck there until a survivor opens the exit gate. the Smasher, a scrapped killer that didn't pass the prototype phase. The Smasher's main ability was that he could destroy all obstacles on the map, such as trees, walls, and other parts of buildings. He was removed very early in the game's development, with the main reason being that it would be too difficult to balance a killer who could just straight up remove elements from the map. Burger King Myers. One of the more popular meme builds, this is achieved when you pick the Shape Killer and equip Judith's Tombstone and the Vanity Mirror add-ons. Normally, Judith's Tombstones allows the player to basically more a survivor when they reach Evil Within 3, however it also moderately decreases the player's movement speed. Once you've done exactly that, you'll drop back down to Evil Within 2, and Vanity Mirror allows you to see survivors through the wall when they are within 16 meters of you. However, this add-on does not allow you to progress past Evil Within 2. That means you can't actually use the Mori part of Judith's Tombstone. So, in the end, all that these add-ons do to you is decrease your movement speed, increase the amount of evil required to reach Evil Within 2, and give you the ability to see people through walls when you are stalking. So if you're someone who is a super serious gamer, you wouldn't be caught dead using this build ever. Nia is a killer / the entity. Yet another meme made by the community. No, she isn't actually a killer or the entity. This mostly stems from Nia's appearance and how she is represented by players and even animators on YouTube, most notably by Samination. The Teacher, another scrapped killer. Around the time near the announcement for the Last Breath chapter, which saw the release of the nurse and Nia Carson, some interesting files were found within the game's icon folders, all unused being icons for a killer power, a killer perk, and a survivor item. This of course led to people believing that we would be getting a teacher-themed chapter, especially with behavior not too long after this discovery, announcing they were working on the first ever chapter for the game. However, the trailer was dropped and that was about it. No further advancement was made, and honestly, we may never get this killer. Moonlight Brightness. Moonlight Brightness are a set of offerings that, if offered, would either increase or decrease the brightness of the moonlight in-game. They were obtained through the Blood Web for both killers and survivors. However, with patch 1.8.2, the Moonlight Brightness offerings were disabled to be spawned in the Blood Web, meaning that only players who already had a bouquet could use one. When patch 2.3 was released, the bouquets were permanently retired and can't even be picked in the game of Kill Your Friends. Every player is toxic. If you ask me, I believe everyone who plays Dead by Daylight has gone through some sort of cycle. Maybe not in the same order, but a cycle nonetheless. But within the stages of being complementary players and an MLG god, we all at one point come to the toxicity stage. Sometimes it can even blend in with whatever else we're doing at the time. There are too many examples to list of what makes a player toxic, but I'm sure you get the possible idea. The Pig's Face model. Despite not having her face being visible at any time during gameplay, the pig does have a detailed face. This isn't entirely unusual, as the Trapper and the Huntress both wear masks as well, and both also have faces underneath. But the thing here is, unlike the pig, parts of their face can still be somewhat seen. And honestly, it looks like Behavior actually put some effort into making her face anyway. Pretty good job so far. These are one of the most infamous sentences said by Mathieu Kuti, one of the lead producers of the game. As you probably could imagine, following the interview where he said these words, people started memeing on the game, and most often making videos featuring some bizarre and game-breaking glitches, accompanied by a clip of Mathieu saying his line. Mathieu himself recognized the meme and have references on a few occasions during the different developer streams. Old stun mechanic. Nowadays, if you want to save a survivor from getting hooked, specifically by either flashlighting the killer or dropping a pallet on them, you have to now perfectly time your attempt. Sometimes you may end up not blinding the killer fully, or you do, but you did it too early. A few years ago, however, this was not the case. For some reason, Behavior thought it was a good idea to allow survivors to blind or steal the killer before the pickup animation ended, and when it did end, the survivor was able to escape. Of course, this didn't sit well, especially with the killer mains. Fortunately, this was later changed. Legacy Prestige. Before patch 1.3, grinding Bloodbath for the game was significantly more harder, so to award those who went through the struggle, Behavior awarded players with a special one-time reward for prestiging a character. The reward was a legacy attire for said character. These can no longer be obtained in a legitimate way, and hey, now you know that if you see someone wearing anything legacy, they are an old school Dead by Daylight player. Moonwalking. By performing a precise and well-timed movement with your W, A, S and D buttons, you can make your character perform a moonwalk. This is mostly for survivors, as killers don't really have a difficult time pulling something like this off. But moonwalking doesn't really provide anything significant to the gameplay, and it's mostly for people who like to show off, or have absolutely nothing else to show their 5 Twitch viewers. Old Insta-Heal. From patch 1.0 up until patch 3.3, both the Styptic Agent and anti-hemorrhagic syringe worked a little bit different from what they used to do. When deployed, the Styptic Agent would instantly heal you from one state to another, or more specifically, if you used it on a down survivor, they would immediately go into injured state, and if using the agent on an injured survivor, they would be fully healed. The anti-hemorrhagic syringe could heal a survivor from a down state to a fully healed and completely skipping the injured state. Another fun fact, at first both add-ons were different rarities, with the Styptic Agent previously being a rare and the syringe being a very rare. However, when patch 1.8.2 was released, both add-ons moved one rarity tier respectively. Quick Play. Quick Play was an additional game mode to search for lobbies. You could join or create a ranked lobby as either a killer or survivor, however you were unable to queue with your friends, and you were ranked based on the blood points you earned during your match. However, when patch 1.5 was released, Quick Play was completely removed from the game, citing the reason for it being that the mode was only ever used by a very small portion of the player base at the time. Unused items. Within the game file, some interesting stuff can be found. Some of these things includes this unused item for the survivors called Trapple. However, the description and the effect this item would have done is currently unknown, and this image is the only thing to confirm its existence. It may have been planned alongside the Teacher Killer. Some other stuffs includes unused add-ons for the Firecracker item. While no images or descriptions for these add-ons exist, we do know at least partially what the effects of these add-ons would have been. Fog Whisperers Program. The Fog Whisperers are these little icons you can find on just about every well-known Dead by Daylight community figures, especially Twitch streamers. The program aims to reward streaming and video content creators for building communities around the game. These said content creators are offered resources by Behavior to support their Dead by Daylight content and grow within the gaming industry. For some reason a really long time ago, I thought these icons were meant to detect cheaters in game. I have no idea why I thought that. Kate Denson's original voice actor. Before the Curtain Call chapter was released, both the clown and the survivor Kate Denson were being tested in the public test beta for the game. In the PTB, Kate was originally voiced by Marie Michel. However, when the PTB ended and the chapter was officially released, Kate was instead voiced by Daphne Pullan Guldo. While most people would like to say the main reason for Marie's replacement is because of players complaining about her screams whenever she got hooked, Behavior themselves said that Marie was just a temporary replacement. However, considering the amount of effort and time spent into Kate's PTB voice alone, this may not be the entire truth. Dead by Daylight 2-year anniversary tournament. In the summer 2018, to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of Dead by Daylight's release, the first ever official tournament was announced, being organized by Space Esports. However, what should have just been a normal tournament, similar to that of the previous Saw and Nightmare on Elm Street tournaments, this was just a complete shit show. We had asinine rules, the casters clearly not being that experienced with Dead by Daylight, a team getting multiple rematches despite the rules stating that you only get one rematch. Hell, even Space Esports themselves were being accused of stealing someone else's artwork for the tournament promo. Now, if you want to learn more or have a more in-depth look at the situation, may I suggest checking out Tide Time's video on the whole tournament. The moving statues. On the Sanctum of Wrath map, located around the shrine, you can find these statues called the Yizubusatsu. If you move your camera off them and then look back at them, they will now be looking at you. Pretty freaky stuff. play something else. Another infamous sentence said by director Mathieu Cuti, but unfortunately it doesn't have a nice outcome. During a developer stream in 2018, when responding to a player who stated that playing Killer was much more stressful and less fun than it used to be. That mainly falls under the reason being, at the time this took place, the whole old stun mechanic thing I talked about earlier took place, which also meant that a lot of survivors started bringing flashlights and, well, would bully the killers. And what was Mathieu's response to this? Well, that was for those who felt stressed to, quote, go play Survivor, unquote, or something else like Civilization 5. Obviously, people were not happy in the slightest about the statement, and later on, Mathieu would make a Steam post that was more or less just damage control. Skills. I don't remember why I put this in quotes after someone like Mathieu has said something about people needing skills or something. But basically, skills is an unused status effect that was found within the game files, with this icon being the only confirmation of it. I have absolutely no idea what the status effect was going to be for, and maybe that's exactly why they didn't add this. Leatherface DLC scrapped Survivor. When the Leatherface DLC was released, it didn't come with a Survivor, being a first at the time. While the whole Leatherface ate his Survivor meme came about because of this, it was also questioned whenever or not that there was supposed to be an inclusion for a Survivor, with the most popular belief being Sally Hardesty, who, spoiler alert, was the final surviving girl in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. One factor to this is the fact that the trailer and the DLC itself seemed a bit rushed. And believe it or not, the DLC was supposed to have a survivor included, but it wasn't Sally or any other TCM characters. It was in fact Kate Denson. In fact, the whole DLC was supposed to be its own complete chapter and not a paragraph. Now, Kate may seem like a random inclusion, like why not have Sally or Stretch from the second movie? Well, as it turns out, Leatherface doesn't really have a specific antagonist throughout the entire franchise, which is why they and any other character were ruled out. But time constrained with the Nightmare on Elm Street chapter DLC being released a month after Leatherface, the developers were forced to prioritize their resources on it over the Leatherface chapter, causing them to downgrade it to a paragraph and cutting Kate Denson from it. She would of course later be released alongside the clown with the Curtain Call chapter DLC. The Hag Cannon. Sometime before January 2020, there existed a glitch with the Hag where if you equip the Scarred Hand add-on, which gives you Mud Phantom's Collision, if a survivor falls from behind and lands directly on top of a deployed Phantom, once the Phantom is gone, they'll have a chance of just flying straight up. Results can vary from bouncing on the Phantom like a trampoline, being shot straight for the stars, having a so long gay bouncer moment, and you being sent to the underworld, never to return back to the surface, and yes, making it unplayable for you. And hey, I even made a video about it before it was fixed. Fun while it lasted. Early character name. In total, 10 different killers have had different names during development. Trapper was Shuckles, Wraith was both Banshee and Bob, Hillbilly was Crooked, Shape was obviously both Boogeyman and Stalker, Hag was Witch, Doctor was Mu Yi, Huntress was both Anna and Bear, Cannibal was of course Leatherface, Nightmare was Sandman, and the Clown was both Ringmaster and Medicine Man. No other early names can be found for the other killers or any of the survivors. Early realm and map names. On the map side of things, Groning Storehouse was simply known as Storehouse, Ironworks of Misery was Foundry, Shelter Woods was Forest, Suffocation Pit was Mine, Azarov's Resting Place was Office, Blood Lodge was simply Lodge, Gas Heaven was Gas Station, Wretched Shop was Garage, Fractured Cowshed was Barn, Rented Abattoir was Slaughterhouse, Rotten Fields were Cornfield, The Thompson House was Farmhouse, Torment Creek was Silo, Disturbed Ward was Asylum, Grim Pantry was Dead Lake, Treatment Theater was simply Treatment, Mother's Dwelling was Madhouse, and the game was Hideout. For realms, Macmillan Estate was Industrial, Autohaven Records was Junkyard, Coldwind Farm was Farm, Crowder's Pen Asylum was simply Asylum, Haddonfield was Suburbs, Backwater Swamp was simply Swamp, Larry's Memorial Institute was Hospital, Red Forest was Boreal, and here are the funny ones. Springwood was England, Gideon Meat Plant was Finland, and Yamaoka Estate was Haiti. It seems like with and after the release of the Nightmare on Elm Street Chapter DLC, behavior just started to refer to the different realms to random countries in alphabetical order. Dead Hard Flying Bug. When you are struck by the killer and enter the injured state, you're given a small sudden speed boost in order to put some distance between you and the killer. However, Dead Hard's usage also used to affect the speed boost you get while you were in the air. That means that you could reach otherwise unreachable spots on certain maps. The most infamous one being on the game map, where if you Dead Hard over the drop holes on the second floor after being injured, you can very easily fly past the closed exit gates and escape. This stayed in the game until patch 2.0, where the added speed bonus while in the air was removed because of these issues. r/Dead by Daylight April Fool's 2018. Something that the Dead by Daylight subreddit tends to do on April Fool's Day, it is for them to find another subreddit to swap the layouts for. In 2018, they did exactly that with the Lap Fox Track subreddit. That subreddit is dedicated to Ren Queenston, a musical artist who also happens to be a furry. Now, that alone sets some people off, but this was nothing too harmful, and this simple swap was mostly dedicated to promote Ren, as at the time, two of the moderators for the Dead by Daylight subreddit was also moderators for the Ren subreddit. All was seemingly fine. That was until people found out that Ren was an alleged rapist. After this discovery, people were, as you can imagine, pretty pissed and completely shut on the whole thing. After the whole thing blew over, one of the moderators in particular were removed as moderator on the Dead by Daylight subreddit, while the other one left the subreddit for a little while. An apology was also given by the moderators of the subreddit. Some accepted the apologies and just wanted to move on from the whole ordeal, others didn't accept it and wanted the moderators to take responsibility with promoting a rapist. However, it's been 3 years now and it seems like everyone has moved on. Carl. Carl is the name of the cashier seen in the Ghostface trailer. Ever since his appearance, people have clamored to the possibility of Carl being added as a playable survivor for the game. However, in keeping with the canon of the game, Carl is dead and will not be making another appearance anytime soon. Early prop names. In the game files, some props that can be found and interacted with on all different maps have some early names attached to them. Before, pallets were called bookshelves for some reason, hex totems were called hex bags, and the jigsaw boxes were called puzzle boxes. Rafe's unused and removed add-ons. In total, Rafe holds the record for having the most add-ons from him removed. These are the suit variant of Swift Hunt, the mud and white variant of All Seeing, and the suit, blood and spirits variants of Blind Warrior. On top of those, Rafe also has an unused add-on called the Shadow Dance suit. Considering there already exists a blood and white variant of Shadow Dance, it is unknown why this one was left out. Vacuum pallet. Back in the day, whenever a survivor would drop a pallet, they would automatically be sucked to the opposite side of the pallet and dropping it. This also affected fast vaulting. This of course made looping and chasing much easier to maintain for survivors, and probably making the killer furious in the process. Eventually, these were fixed. Unused perks. In total, there are 6 unused perks that exist within the game files. Only 4 of these perks have unknown powers, those being the Artifact Hunter, Tough Runner, and Overconfidence for survivors, and Underperform for killers, though this one may have been for the previously mentioned Teacher Killer. But 2 of the remaining perks does have a description. First is In the Dark, a perk for killers, which would set your terror radius to 32, 24, or 16 meters depending on how many survivors are left in the game. And we have Last Standing for survivors, which would increase your action speed by 7.5, 15, or 25% for each survivor that are killed or manage to escape. This was an early version of the Left Behind perk. Plague's unused audio. During the PTB for the Plague, there were audio files found within the game files that were completely unused in the game. When the Demise of the Faithful chapter was released, these audios were removed from the files. The Ormond Crane. In the trailer for the Darkness Among Us chapter DLC, this crane can be seen in the background. And during the PTB for the Legion, this crane could also be found and you could enter it. However, when the DLC and the map was released, Behavior had to disable the map for some time due to a bug that caused players to crash when they played on the Mount Ormond Resort map. When it was finally back and players were able to play on it again, it was discovered that the crane was missing. It is unknown why Behavior disabled it, but we can probably guess it had something to do with what caused players to crash. Survivors are immortal. Keeping with the settings and the lore of Dead by Daylight, we know for a fact that all the survivors and killers are all stuck in some kind of place like hell. Considering that being killed, sacrificed, or even escaping the trial only transports you back to the campfire for your next game, and seeing how it never ends, we can assume that they are all immortal and therefore are fully unkillable. Exclusive cosmetics. Certain characters in the game have exclusive cosmetic attires. This isn't referred to DLCs or promotional codes, but rather cosmetics given to a certain person. For example, the Trapper has a mask called Mask of Delirium, and was given exclusively to content creator H2O Delirious. Meg has a shirt called Bryce McQuaid's shirt, given exclusively to, you guessed it, Bryce McQuaid, a fellow content creator. And Nia has a shirt called Is it Dia or Dia, and was given exclusively to Diatech, yet another content creator. 2 vaults in Killer Shack. This screenshot is from an old beta of Dead by Daylight back in 2016. It seemed like the Killer Shack was going to have 2 vaults instead of 1 door and 1 vault. This was most likely changed later on due to possible looping reasons and the fact that killers wouldn't be too super strong in this case. We'll make it and self-care. The self-care perk allows you, the player, to heal yourself without the need of a medkit, although at a slower speed. And the Will Make It perk is activated when you unhook another survivor and allows you to heal the other survivors with increased speed for a limited time. However, the perk does not affect your healing speed on yourself. But that wasn't always the case, as back when Dead by Daylight was first released, the perk did in fact increase the healing speed rather than your altruistic healing speed. That meant if you equip both perks, had Will Make It activated and you get hit by the killer and enter an injured state, you could very quickly heal yourself back to full before even the killer's blood wiping animation is over. This was clearly overpowered and led to gameplays like this happening for some short time after release. However, when patch 1.0.2 was dropped, they specifically made the Will Make It perk effect on other survivors and not you. Ghostface flip phone. Going back to the Ghostface leak, when you perform Ghostface's Mori, at the end of it, he pulls out a flip phone and takes a picture of you and the killed survivor. However, when the Ghostface chapter DLC was released, Ghostface now instead uses a camera. Killer Shack on Haddonfield. In the Spotlight trailer for the Halloween chapter DLC, at around the 1 minute mark, you can see the Killer Shack in between 2 of the houses. However, in the final game, the shack is nowhere to be seen and never actually spawns in when playing on the Haddonfield map. Third person killer. A really rare bug that can happen. When playing as a survivor and you get hooked, your camera won't reset itself and make it focus on you while you're on the hook, but will instead stay with the killer. The camera will stay on the killer until you're either sacrificed or saved. Yui's model leak. Alright, so, while data miners were digging through the files of Dead by Daylight, they managed to find some interesting renders of Yui. And by interesting, I mean fully detailed nipples. Yeah, have fun! The game is perfectly balanced. This ultimately comes down to one thing: specification. As in, the game is truly only balanced when you're playing a specific killer or survivor, and is taken with you a specific set of perks, offerings, or add-ons, and line with a specific set of players running another specific set of builds, while also playing on a specific rotation of a specific map. Other than this, yeah, the game isn't entirely balanced. Shadow creatures. Players have reported seeing some shadowy figures and creatures while playing the game, even though they're clearly not another survivor or the killer. Some say they stand completely still until you approach them, to which they'll simply disappear. Others say they are following them, and once they're spotted, they duck away as if they were never there. However, as creepy yet fun it would be to imagine such an occurrence, it most likely is people just misseeing stuff or just a case of monkey see, monkey do. Unknown voice actors. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with the knowledge that Steve Herron, whose voice actor in the game, is unknown. And no, he's not voiced by Joe Keery. However, there are another 8 characters in the game whose voice actors we don't know the origin of. These are the Blight, the Executioner, the Plague, both of the twins, Yan Lee, Cheryl Mason, and Elodie Rakoto. Huntress is still a child. This theory is more so about Huntress's mentality. Considering that the only person that Huntress had any contact with was her mother as they lived a solitary life somewhere in the woods, it is safe to assume that the Huntress mostly learned from her. This includes hunting for food. But one day as they were stalking a deer, the Huntress's mother was killed by said deer. From then on, living on her own and only really knowing what her mother had taught her, we can also assume that she never further mentally grew, not learning how to properly speak and only sing the lullabies she learned from her mom, and would even kidnap little girls because she thought she was saving and taking care of them, but they always end up starving or freezing to death. And every time this happened, Huntress was clearly pained and sorrowed by this, not knowing why this was happening. So besides her advanced training in hunting and killing, in her own mind, Huntress is still a little girl, just like she was when her mother died right in front of her. All DLCs are connected. So since for example Michael Myers can appear on a Dead by Daylight map and a Dead by Daylight survivor can appear on Haddonfield, we can safely assume that they take place in the same universe, because how else would they appear at these places? This obviously expands to the other DLCs from other media as well, like Elm Street and Midwich Elementary School. But again, since Michael can also appear on Elm Street and Freddy can appear in Haddonfield also, this must mean that they also are in the same universe. You can see where I'm going with this. Every DLC and everything else in Dead by Daylight is canon and takes place in the same universe. Killers are based on real events / people. Some of the killers in the game are based on real people or events. Some obvious ones being Leatherface is based on Ed Gein, the Clown is based on John Wayne Gacy, and the Doctor is based on Yang Yong-sin. Some other killers are also based on non-real world characters, like for example the Trickster is loosely based on the Joker, and the Blight is based on the famous story called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The player is the entity. This theory falls in the belief that it is in fact the player who is the entity. After all, you are the one deciding who should go. You pick the survivor who shall suffer, or the killer who shall unleash the suffering. You win, you lose, you escape or sacrifice. In the end, it doesn't matter because they never end. You go back to your lobby, maybe pick out a new character and play again. You just now decide that the survivor or the killer have to keep going. They can't stop what you're doing. You're the one controlling them and deciding what happens. You make the moves, they merely follow it. You might just be the entity. Which also means the player is Nia. And with that, that was the Dead by Daylight Iceberg, or at least my version of the Dead by Daylight Iceberg. I know there already exist like different icebergs of Dead by Daylight online, and you know, if you want to look at them, you can go look at them. I wanted this iceberg to primarily be about things that could seem legitimate, like, you know, when it comes to theories and like things that have actually exist and have, you know, actual evidence behind it. I'm really shit at fucking outros if you can't tell. But yeah, anyway, that was it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like the content that I make. Like this video if you liked it. Comment down below. Maybe interact with people. And with that said, I'm Barfield, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.